Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Dan Blanchard with the Travel in Time with Dan show, where we mix travel with history and with leadership, and of course with me, Dan Blanchard. Today, I am at the Battleship Iowa Museum in the Port of Los Angeles in the San Pedro, California neighborhood in California of Los Angeles. The Port of Los Angeles, by the way, is the largest port, I think, in this hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere, the whole world. So this is really, really big port. You might be able to see some of it over here. Okay, so let me say, this battleship, Battleship Iowa, this battleship was pretty much that day's version of Air Force One. If I can give you a modern day example to compare it to. We all know, we see on TV, the Air Force One, the president flying in it, and how fancy it is. Well, this is the World War II version of like Air Force One, except it's obviously on the water in a big battleship instead of like an airplane in the air, all right? So now there was a philosophy, a military philosophy that I think has rung true throughout the years. If you control the oceans, you basically control the world. So if you got the biggest, baddest, meanest Navy in the world, then you're going to have a lot of success militarily, which also means diplomatically as well, because you can use, what's that called? Diplomacy guns of diplomacy you can use. All right. So now this battleship right here, the Iowa battleship of the Iowa class of battleships, was the lead, right? And this thing's been activated 3 times. Obviously during World War II, we had an incredibly interesting top secret mission that I will share with you in a moment, but it was reactivated in the Korean War and then reactivated again for a 3rd time in the Cold War in the 80s by Ronald Reagan. All right, this boat is huge. Guys, this is the best of World War II battleships, right? This thing has those 16-inch guns right over there, the biggest in the world in World War II. By the way, that means like the shell size, right? The biggest in the world. This boat was the biggest, baddest, meanest, best battleship in the world during World War II. All right, this thing is freaking amazing. It's about 3 football fields long. All right, and I think it was something like 2,800 sailors were on this. When they redid it later on, updated some, they knocked it down to about 1,500 sailors in the 80s. But World War II, you got a floating city here. You got 2,800 people. Imagine feeding them, caring for them, and giving them everything they need. It's a floating city. All right? Now, FDR, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the only president to be elected 4 times, he's got an amazing history on this. He did a top secret mission when he went over to the Tehran Conference in Iran to meet up with Stalin of the Soviet Union and Churchill of England, and they were trying to figure out how they were going to beat Hitler, how they were going to conclude the war, what was going to happen after the war, right? And this boat right here pretty much became the floating White House, all right? Now, FDR, a lot of people today didn't know he had polio and was in a wheelchair, but they had to make some adjustments for FDR. So they put an elevator in there. They put ramps over those knee knockers. The door sills, those high step door sills where you knock your knees on it if you're not careful. Well, they put the ramps on that. And this battleship right here, they put in the president's quarters, FDR's quarters, a bathtub. It is the only bathtub in history on a battleship. And he's got a bathtub in there. Now, another reason they picked this boat to secretly transport Roosevelt over to the Tehran Conference to meet up with Stalin and Churchill was that the German U-boats were real concerned. I know I'm in California right now, but this was out of Virginia. This boat sailed out of Virginia to the Tehran Conference, and the German U-boats were all over the Atlantic Ocean at the time. Now, this boat, heavily armored, right? One of the best warships out there, battleships out there, heavily armored, and it was fast. So that's where they picked it, so the German U-boats would have less of a chance of hitting it. However, there's a crazy story about how it kind of got torpedoed anyways, in a sense. And this is what happened. The United States had some destroyers accompanying this across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, one of the destroyers accidentally shot a torpedo at this Iowa battleship here, right, going right at FDR. Now, the captain of the Iowa saw the torpedo coming. They all thought it was some sort of an assassination attempt from the Germans, the U-boats. He turned the boat into the torpedo and sped up and caused all sorts of turbulence, where the torpedo went for the turbulence and destroyed itself in the turbulence, and thus did not hit the Iowa, and FDR was safe. FDR had quite a show there, no doubt about it, and I'm sure some heads rolled after that they accidentally almost assassinated our own president. Go figure. Now, this battleship that you're looking at behind me, this represents the peak of battleships before the aircraft carriers kind of took over and became the dominant Navy weapon. You know, the planes could fly out and attack, and it was just hard, really hard. Billy Mitchell kind of proved that. Later on, the Japanese, they bombed Pearl Harbor, reinforced what Billy Mitchell had been saying all along, that even though the battleship is awesome, it's really, really hard to defend it against hundreds of planes that are trying to take it down. Really, really hard to do that. All right? So, but it does. This represents the peak of battleships, right? This thing was even called the Battleship of the Presidents, because FDR was on it, President Bush was on it, President Reagan was on it, and like I told you, it had been activated 3 times during those years, a lot of years. It earned 11 battleship stars in combat. Really, really cool. Now, the Cold War eventually ends, and the Cold War ends. They're like, we don't really need this anymore. So they're going to decommission the Battleship Iowa, turn it into the beautiful museum that you're seeing here today. In San Pedro, the Port of Los Angeles. So, you know, whenever I do these episodes, I'd like to talk to you about traveling. This is such a cool place to come down. Talk to you a little bit about the history. Of course, I've done that. And the leadership, of course. So what is the leadership lesson? Well, I think the leadership lesson is great leaders adapt to changing times, right? This premier battleship was using a diplomatic top secret mission to get Roosevelt over there. And of course, it was really, really good at what it did. But then it adapted. Kept a lot of the 1940s technology, but it did upgrade to some of the modern eras that it was passing through technology as it was going through the Korean War, the Cold War. It just kept adapting, right? And now it's adapted again as a museum instead of being put in what they call the mothballs. It's a modern day museum. So this battleship just keeps adapting. All right. Well, anyway, listen, guys, I hope you had a great time with me today in the Travel on Time with Dan show, where we mix travel and history and leadership with me, of course, Dan Blanchard. I'll be back real soon with another really cool and fun episode of something else. Take care now.